So this algorithm is worth 6 marks. As part of this algorithm, you are given a function called convertFC, which accepts a temperature in Fahrenheit, and this function will convert that temperature to Celsius and returns that number back to the main program. So it says Julian needs to write a program with the following functionality. First of all, the program needs to create a text file called dailytemps.txt. It needs to allow the user to enter a date and a temperature in Fahrenheit for as many dates as they want. It will write the date and both temperatures, Fahrenheit and Celsius, to the text file. And then we need to remember that the file is closed when we're finished. It says in the question that you need to use the convertFC function to be able to do the conversion. So we're going to break this down into a few different steps. The very first thing we want to do is to create a text file called dailytemps.txt. So we're going to do that in pseudocode by writing something like open file, and then in brackets the file name. So dailytemps.txt. And so that indicates that we want to open a file, and it would also suggest that if that file doesn't exist, then it's going to create it. Our next job is to get from the user the date and the temperature that they want to record. And so we know how to do that too. So we start off by saying the variable name that we want to store it in, like date, equals input, and then in brackets a message to our user. So something like, please enter date. You can write that in there. Then we'll do a very similar thing for the temperature. So maybe call that temp equals input, and then a message to the user. Now for this one, don't forget our users need to enter the temperature in Fahrenheit. So it's probably worth including that in your message to the user to make sure they enter the right thing. So you've now got your 2 values. Now it does say in the question that users should be able to enter as many dates as they want to. So it sounds as though we're going to need to repeat this part of the code until the user doesn't want to enter any more dates. So we need to think about how we're going to do that. It definitely sounds like it needs to be a loop. So I'm going to make the program continue to loop around asking for a date and a temperature until the user indicates they want to finish, perhaps by pressing the X key. So I'm going to write while date does not equal X and temp does not equal X. So that line there means I'm going to keep repeating this code all the time that the date and the temp variables do not have an X in them. So that means as soon as the user enters an X, then it's going to end my loop. So don't forget to close the while loop. So we do end while to close that. Our next job is to calculate the value in Celsius. So whenever we do a calculation, we need to be able to store the result. So let's create a variable to store it first. So maybe we'll call that temp C equals, and then this is where we're going to call our function convertFC. So we call the function convertFC, and you know that this function accepts one parameter, the temperature in Fahrenheit. So we're going to pass through our temperature, which we call temp. So that means it's going to get our temperature, pass it into the function, which means it gets sent up here. It will do the calculation, and you know that functions always return a value. That value will get returned to this point in the code and then put inside temp C to store it so that we can use it. Our last job then is to save this information to the text file. And we can do that by writing something like write to file, or or you might write something like print to file is also fine. And then in brackets, we're going to pass through the things that we want to save into the file. So the first thing we want to put is the date. And then we're going to use some sort of string manipulation to join that with some other information. So we can say plus, and then I might want to separate it with a colon, plus, and we also want to add the temp. And then we can say plus, and separate it with a colon, and plus. I also want to add temp C. Temp C, close bracket. So all I've done here is some basic string manipulation that says I want to output date and I want to join onto it a comma and I want to join onto that the next date and so on. Now don't forget, when we join strings together like this, it's called concatenation. And you might have sometimes used the and symbol. I'm just showing you that you can use the and symbol or you can use the plus. Either will be absolutely fine. Our last job then is to remember, if we open a file, we must always close that file. And so we can do that by just writing something like close file and maybe brackets. And if you want to be really specific, just to make it really clear you know what we're talking about, you could even put in brackets the file name to show that you want to close that particular file.